$37 later and I've acquired a fuel filter. After going through 2 batteries and then having to run it off with the good old Power Pepsi, I got it running off of the tank again, surprisingly. I stopped it there and then just switched it back to the tank and was just trying to carefully bring it into the garage by cranking it, and then it just started up as I was driving it forward and first with only the starter moving it, which isn't the healthiest thing, but I was being lazy. I'm gonna let it run for a bit, maybe even take it for a drive and then see how the fuel's looking from the filter. Oh, just looking at it now, it's already full the top again. The battery I ended up using was the one that came with the car. After I charged it up for a day using my battery charger, it works again. Just made it back from the test drive. The first thing I'd like to point out is that the rear window defrost works. Started defrosting through this layer of snow. It only died on me once during the drive. Not sure if the fuel filter got airlocked or what happened. My coolant bottle windshield washer fluid receptacle did not work very well. That was just from the battery crushing it. But with the other battery in it, I went out and after sitting overnight, there was just a huge puddle of blue stuff. So that was a loss of like $2. I managed to get to work around a little bit and then back today with only one small problem regarding fueling. I think the fuel that I put in the filter yesterday must have gelled up because I was running good on the way home and then died, and then it was frozen. I could tell because nothing was pulling. Luckily I had this and got all the way home on that. I just checked and there's like nothing left in the bottom, so I got really lucky and I didn't get stuck in too much traffic. I just blew air through the lines both ways again and then cranked a whole bunch and fuel pulled in. It looks kind of gross, so I think it was reaching cloud point and some of it actually started to gel as I expected. Another thing I never pointed out with this car is the amount of speakers in it. There's 2 speakers installed in the back of the seat. This unit up front, I think those are the factory ones. Somebody just wanted the best sound system ever in this car. They wanted it so good that they took the head unit. Sure, that was a real keeper. They're using it somewhere right now. Here's something I just realized today. That squealing sound that I thought was the accessory belt is actually the timing belt tensioner. So that needs to get done very soon. I'm going to take off the valve cover and see if I can get my ALH locking tool to fit on this engine. Of course, the last one has some sort of problem. I'm going to try it with a ratchet. The whole stud is spinning. It just needed some harder hits with the hammer. I pulled it out and that stud just came right with this, so I'm going to have to try to thread it back in. And the valve cover gasket came out in many pieces. So I'm going to have to see if I can source a replacement for that relatively quickly. The good news is this looks very similar to the cam lock on my ALH. I got the cam lined up. It's still a tiny bit off, but it should be enough to see if this tool is going to actually fit in here. It is very close. If I take out this rubber piece here, that is probably very hard to replace. It goes in the left side, but not the right side. So I think I just need to turn it a tiny bit more, and that should be enough to get this in. It's in. I did something unadvisable and gave it a little bit of a tap with my rubber hammer. Nothing much, just a little bit more than my hand could deliver. Now I've reached something that may be really not fun, removing the harmonic balancer. If anybody saw the part 1 rabbit video, I also did the timing belt to my ALH in that video, and I had all of these strip out, had to cut one off, and it was just generally not a fun situation. So we'll see if an extra 20 years adds anything to this. First one broke free, so that's a good sign. I tapped it into place with my trusty rubber hammer. 3 more to go. So far it's going better than the TDI. Now I just have to get this belt off. And that's done by loosening the alternator, because there is no tensioner for this. For some reason I thought this was different than the ALH, and that it was held on by the main bolt here too, so I spent forever trying to get it off. And then I was worried that I skipped a tooth on the timing belt, but I looked and the marks still lined up. I hadn't made these at that point. After I recorded the last section, I looked a little bit closer. You can see there actually is a mark on the end of the injection pump sprocket there, and it lines up with that line right down there. And that was already perfect. So I guess I did get top dead center when I did this. I was so close. Got the belt off, thought I was going to be able to get this pulley out, but whatever I try, it just hits the body of the car. So I'm going to have to take the motor mount out and jack the motor up a little bit. It's almost like if you do the job right, it should work. I'm going to probably finish the water pump tomorrow, because you don't need to get the timing belt off to get to that. Timing belt is back on and tensioned to about quarter deflection. Now I just have to tighten back up the cam and then put the valve cover on and see if it'll run. First I'm going to crank it over by hand, obviously. I cranked it over a few times, got it back to top dead center, and verified that the injection pump is in line again. Obviously nothing to see on the crank, but it's pointed down, that's where my mark was, so everything should be lined up and good to go. I thought maybe the injection pump was timed wrong at first because of the way it was running, but I think it just cooled down quite a bit, so it just wasn't warm, and that's usually how it runs when it's cold. Here's some of the stuff I picked up. A Westward tap and die set for $60. They marked it down because it's been at the store for over a year, and then asked them if they could do any better, and they said they'd give it to me for $60 with no tax on top. Some more terminal connectors, hex sockets, M6 hardware, and just some Imperial stuff because it was a good deal for what it was. Found a new V-belt at PartSource, and then 3 oil drain pans. They were $1.75 each. The tap worked very well. That hole looks good as new now, so I should be able to just thread this stud back in. I decided to take a die to the threads of the outside of that stud just because they were kind of gross. I'll do the other side as well. Before I change the water pump out, I want to clean up this valve cover and repaint it. I want to do this first so that it'll have time to dry before I want to start the engine up again and put this back on. I've just started taking a wire brush to it and cleaning off the rust spots. The alternator doesn't sound very healthy, so that could have been the sound I was hearing as well. Now the alternator and water pump are out. That wasn't too terrible to do. Here's the water pump. So I plan on keeping this back half and replacing the front. The reason I'm doing that is because I didn't see a full unit for sale on Rock Auto that would ship to me with the rest of my parts. Now, here's something I was kind of expecting may happen because I saw different sized mounting points on the water pumps. Here's the original. Fits this fine, obviously. Here's the new one. Does not fit. So I'm going to have to figure something out for that. Bad news. I broke off not 1, but 3 of the bolts for the water pump. and the other ones did not feel like they were loosening either. So I'm going to see if I can just source a whole new one of these units. For now, this is going to go back in the car because I'd like to keep it mobile still. Everything is reinstalled now except for the alternator. Before I put it back in, I'm going to try and disassemble it and see if I can do something about that squeaking. Just opened up the alternator and the brushes just popped right on out of their spots. The one looks pretty broken on the top of it, or worn down. Hopefully I can get those back in. What I want to see if I can lubricate are those bearings in there. I think I'm just going to try it with some lithium grease. But first I want to get the brushes back in. Crisis averted with the brushes. I got them back in, and luckily there was actually a spot that you can lock them in place. I was hoping there would be some sort of external hole, and I looked around the back and found one I could fit a drill bit in. So those are good. Now I want to try to lubricate that bearing and maybe get some of that crud out of there because that doesn't look healthy. I decided to take apart the front half of the alternator because it's what wobbled around. Maybe I can get this bearing out and actually replace it. It has a decent amount of play in it, so that was probably what was making all the noise. You can really hear it, so that thing is far from good. I just measured this thing out and found the exact size of Princess Auto, so I'm going to go pick one up. Also bring this with me just to make sure. Bearing is acquired, plus some cans of different 3-in-1 oil that was on sale. Oh no, is the center smaller on this bearing? The whole unit's back together now. It doesn't have any slop in it. Everything's back installed again with the new belt on. It was quite the challenge to get the new belt on with the alternator and everything. I almost had to take it back off, but I just ended up removing the bracket for tensioning it fully and then getting it on and then reinstalling that. I thought it'd be too hard, but it worked. Now all I need to wait for is the valve cover, which is just drying. I decided to paint it red. That was some of the spray paint I had on hand from the RAV4. So I'll let that dry for a bit, then put it back on so the car is at least movable. And then hopefully on Tuesday, I'll have the valve cover gasket in. That looks way too nice for the rest of the car. I'm even going to go all out and use some new nuts to hold it on, so I'm not using those old crusty ones that came with it. I also cleaned up the oil cap that I found tucked away back there, so I'll put that on. Now the top of the engine looks a lot better. Once I have things more sorted out, I'd like to clean more areas like this that are just built up years of oil and crud and disgustingness, and fix the wiring that looks terrible. I'd like to actually have it look somewhat decent in here. I just realized I forgot to put these pieces on that spread the load evenly across the valve cover. I just cleaned them up well. I'm not too worried about putting these on yet since I have to take the valve cover off anyways to change the gasket, but I'm going to spray them right now so that they'll be ready to go. It's best to do this with the heater on, blowing paint right at the camera. Before I put this back on, I want to make sure everything is still working as it should be, and I want to meter out and make sure the alternator is actually charging up the battery, just in case something weird happened when I had it apart. Alright, the only bad thing that happened is that the return line flew off because I didn't clamp it down. I thought I was losing a bunch of coolant when I came back, but it was just a bunch of diesel I lost. The alternator was working because the battery was up to 14.6 volts, and it was only at 12.9 volts before I started it. going to use new hardware to hold this on. All of the M6 bolts I bought are hex head. Here's a nice big washer that should do the trick. I feel like this was actually supposed to be one of those rubber things. I should have waited a little bit longer before installing this. It was still a little bit tacky. Now you can see all the marks I got all over it. Maybe once it's fully dried I'll be able to do something with it, but I don't really care that much. I'm going to turn it over by hand a couple times again, just to make sure the timing belt isn't rubbing on this cover. Seems fine to me. No more terrible screaming noise. Still a little lumpy because it's cold. That seems better now. I think that's the perfect place to end it in this video. Everything seems to be working how I want it to, mostly. Right now the valve cover isn't leaking, so that's nice. Still want to put that new gasket in because I don't like the one that's in it right now. And then I'll install these pieces. So I think that'll be nice. And then next video, I think I want to work on getting the rear wiper blade working and getting some heat going again. Hopefully my door handles will show up. I've been waiting on those forever. But yeah, that's it for this one.